spread across 5 majors: advertising, public relations, film, video, journalism, media studies, and telecommunications. The college is the largest nationally accredited program of its kind. We also enroll about 75 students in our master's degree program and in our PhD program. The college is professionally oriented, particularly its journalism program, whose faculty members, I think, blend academic and professional credentials better than any program in the land. A little bit about the John Curley Center for Sports Journalism. The center explores issues and trends in sports journalism through instruction and outreach, programming, and research. And the center's undergraduate curricular emphasis includes courses in sports writing, sports broadcasting, sports information and management, sports media and society, introduction to the sports industry, and sports and public policy. And the center's more than 150 students take advantage of the state-of-the-art classrooms and labs and radio and television studios. The center emphasizes internships at newspapers and magazines and electronic media, as well as on-campus co-curricular activities, such as work at the Daily Collegian, now more than a century old, and hundreds of students work there year in and year out. The campus radio stations, including the college's own COM radio, and work in the Sports Information Office in the Department of Intercollegiate Athletics. The center also coordinates on-campus and off-campus special events with guest speakers, panels, lectures, and workshops. And the center's research component conducts regular studies and surveys about issues and trends in sports journalism. The center was established in 2003, the very first of its kind at an American university, and it was named the John Curley Center for Sports Journalism in September of 2006 in honor of Mr. Curley, whose more than 5 decades of media experience included work as a reporter, an editor, a publisher, and for nearly 20 years as president, chairman, and CEO of the Gannett Company. Mr. Curley was also the first editor of USA Today, and he was the founding co-director of the Center for Sports Journalism here. After he retired a little bit early from Gannett, he came to the college to teach. He taught here for nearly 10 years as a professor of journalism and distinguished professional in residence. I would also like to introduce 3 other people who are integral to the Curley Center for Sports Journalism. Jamie Perry, our Assistant Dean for Academic Services, who handles all of the academic scheduling and advising for the center's students. Mike Porman, Senior Lecturer and Director of Alumni Relations, who teaches sports writing and Introduction to the Sports Industry. Mike. And Steve Samsel, positioned in the back of the room, Senior Lecturer in Journalism, Director of College Relations, who teaches sports writing and who has overseen all of the logistics for tonight's award and tonight's ceremony. A little bit about the award's genesis. We chose to launch the Award for Excellence in Coverage of Youth Sports for 3 primary reasons. First and foremost, coverage of youth sports is important, and it's becoming more so. Youth sports programs involve millions of young people, including 1 out of every 2 high school boys and 1 out of every 3 high school girls in this country, and billions and billions and billions of taxpayer dollars each year. Second, the coverage of youth sports is growing. The rise of the internet, the proliferation of regional sports networks, and the need for local newspapers and television stations to provide sports coverage relevant to their communities are all reasons why we're seeing more coverage devoted to young athletes, even on national television. There seems to be no end in sight. As ESPN Executive Chairman George Bodenheimer said when he was on campus here in September of 2009, the spotlight on youth sports at all levels will only get brighter. And with that prospect comes even more the need for serious conversation about how young athletes should be covered. And we hope that this award will help facilitate some of those conversations. And finally, coverage of youth sports is the future for many of our students. It's rare for one of our graduates to go out and cover professional or collegiate sports exclusively and immediately. Instead, many will start on the prep sports beat, and many will stay with it for a long, long time. And we hope that by bringing outstanding journalists to campus, which we are doing again tonight, for this award will better expose our students to the exceptional work that's being done in the coverage of youth sports, the kind of work that we hope one day our graduates will do. The competition for the award this year was stiff, with entries from the likes of ESPN, the magazine, the nation's first all-sports talk radio station, or show, WFAN in New York City, a host of others, including some smaller outlets around the country, including the West Bend, Wisconsin Daily News, which Steve Samsel told me has entered this contest each and every year that we've had it. Members of our journalism department narrowed the field of those entries very quickly, and then a special committee selected the winner. And it's now my privilege to introduce John Affleck, our Knight Chair in Sports Journalism and Society and the director of the Curley Center. Professor Affleck is in his first year on our faculty, coming to us directly from the Associated Press in New York City, where he served most recently as sports enterprise editor and interim deputy editor. In all, John spent 22 years at the AP, the last 12 in New York City, and before that he worked in Albany, Buffalo, and Cleveland. He's an experienced reporter and manager, and he's covered everything from presidential elections to the World Series, to the Summer Olympic Games, to the World Cup in South Africa, and the BCS College Championship Games. And along the way, he found time to write an impressive first-person series on training for the Boston Marathon, which he finished that year with a net time of 3 hours and 3 minutes. And that earned him, coincidentally, an AP invitation to cover his first Summer Games in Sydney. And with degrees from Notre Dame and Northwestern, along with extensive journalism experience, Professor Affleck literally and figuratively hit the ground running when he came to Penn State last summer. And it's now my pleasure to turn things over to John, and he will introduce tonight's award recipient.
Thanks, Doug. Listening to your introduction, particularly your remarks about the award itself, I feel even better about our winner this year, which is the Tampa Bay Times for their series Varsity Blues. As anyone who follows journalism knows, it's not an easy time in the print industry. Local media with stretched resources can sometimes be reluctant to take on big issues, even when they strike close to home. That's part of why the Times series Varsity Blues stands out so much. Over about a year, the Times staff examined the state of high school sports in a place, Florida, where high school sports are huge. What they found was an increasingly polarized universe where club teams, specialization, parental involvement, and a focus on recruiting, not least of all by the media, have put new pressures on elite athletes, while tight budgets and poor pay for coaches have often made it tougher for young people to simply participate in sports as an extracurricular activity, as part of their daily lives. And yet, amid the bad news, the Times also found a heartening proportion of people who still believe in the value of sport, team building, the joy of competition, the lessons to be found in winning and losing. The series was ambitious work, and it's very good work. And I'm very excited for the Curley Center to present the Award for Excellence in the Coverage of Youth Sports to the Tampa Bay Times. Now, here to accept the award is Matt Baker. Matt's an excellent example of the kind of person you students can strive to be. He's just 6 years out of Northwestern, originally from Columbus, Indiana, and he's moved about 7 times since 2007. And his beat, his primary beat at the Times, is a prep beat. He's the high school sports reporter. And his work basically drove the series, was the foundation of the series, And now he's here to talk a little bit about how they did it and to accept the award. So would you please welcome Matt Baker.
On behalf of my colleagues, I'm so pleased and so thrilled to be up here to accept it. I'm the yahoo that drew the lucky straw because I'm the most attractive, so it's laugh, but it's true. But I'm here to accept it on behalf of my colleagues, John C. Cody, Joel Anderson, Rodney Page, Bob Putnam, Joey Knight, and our fantastic editor, Tracy Johnson. It's kind of crazy. Yesterday I was out covering high school tennis, one of the greatest, most glorious assignments in the world, out on a 12-hour day, getting paid for 8, ducking in the shade on the 80-degree sun, ducking in rain, trying to avoid that stuff, and then now I'm here to accept an award where 2 of the previous 4 winners have Pulitzers. It's humbling and mind-boggling, and I'm extremely grateful and appreciative. I'm more than happy to talk for a couple minutes about the series because I'm so proud of what it did and what it accomplished. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the journalism behind it, because this is a journalism school, right? We're like John said, I'm a prep guy. I'm not an enterprise guy. I'm not a grandiose person, and neither are the rest of us. We're grinders. We're beat guys. We work 40, 50 hours a week. We cover about 80, 82 high schools across 4 counties, and we're out there every day at football practice, at swim meets, at soccer games, and at state tennis in the ring. That's what we do. And when we were out there, even before I got to the Times 3 years ago, some of my colleagues started noticing some problems in high school sports. And when I got there in July 2011, I started noticing some of the same things. I went to a locker room at Gulf High School, football locker room. There's a cardboard box in the middle of it with a bunch of shoes in there. An assistant coach would go to Play It Again Sports or one of the secondhand sports stores, buy some of the used cleats, some of the pre-owned cleats, some of the cheap cleats, put them in there. Kids all new. You outgrow them, your old shoes are gone, take a pair. No one will notice. Do what you got to do. I talked to got a call from a coach, girls basketball coach, a couple weeks after they made it to almost made it to the Final Four, best season in school history. He was quitting. You know why? Because the parents were too insane. They almost made it to the Final Four, best season in school history. Parents were still insane. I was out at state tennis, and the last 2 years there was a young girl there. It's a freshman and sophomore, finished second at state. Didn't play this year. She wasn't there. High school tennis did nothing for her anymore. It's all about the youth stuff. It's all about recruiting. High school tennis wasn't worth her time. So we did what journalists, I think, are supposed to do. We identified a problem, and we did what my high school advisor, Kim Green, back in Columbus, Indiana, taught me. We did what the Tampa Bay Times has done for more than a century. And we did what you all teach here at Penn State. We saw a problem, we put it in the sunshine. We gave a voice to the voiceless. And I really didn't think that these people would not have a voice, but as we started talking to them, they did. Not only were they willing to share our stories, they were desperate to share their stories. Talked to a coach about the piece of football equipment, this blocking sled. Not only was it older than the kids, it was older than some of those kids' parents. When it broke down, they had to call their buddy Jim or whatever his name was to come weld it back together. They would talk about the spread of 7-on-7 football and the decreased emphasis it's putting on the high school game, and the greater emphasis it's putting on individuals. They talk about this one parent, baseball dad, who would carry signs, picket in front of the McDonald's by the high school. Why? Because he thought the administration was unfair. His kid only skipped about 2 days a week. Why couldn't he play baseball? Why couldn't he be a student athlete? So over the course of a year, we started gathering these things up, and we put them into 4 categories and then put a bow on it. The 4 big problems we saw was lack of money, the rise in club sports, crazy parents that are only getting crazier, and then the entitlement culture that we helped spawn. Because we're part of the problem too. So then we spent the next year, off and on, not exclusively, because we're grinders, remember? We spent the next year putting things together. We went out and did the legwork. We talked to dozens of coaches. We requested documents from the school district. We used Excel to figure stuff out. We went through email and looked in archives. All so we could try and come up with a comprehensive look at the 4 biggest problems we think facing high school sports, and what's still good about it, and what some of the solutions are that we can change. When that was all finally done, July last year during All-Star Week, and there's nothing else going on, certainly in a major league market like ours, nothing else is going on, we were ready to put a bow on it, we were ready to send it out. When that happened, I wasn't really sure what to expect. We spent months working on this, and at the end of the day, you're not sure what you have. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised, and I was pleasantly surprised quickly at the nerve it touched and the impact that it had. That's the second main reason I'm so proud to be up here, because the story made a difference. The series made a difference. A couple days after the first story wrote on the money problems facing high school sports, I got an email from some guy from the Fired Football Coaches Association, the FFCA. Any of you guys watch Sports Center and see the John Gruden quarterback camps where he brings in the quarterback before the NFL draft? If you notice, he's either wearing an FFCA hat or an FFCA polo. This was one of his guys, and for some reason, he wanted to talk to me. John lives in Tampa. He used to coach the Bucks, won a Super Bowl there before he became a Fired football coach, right? And in his spare time, he would volunteer at his kid's high school as a volunteer assistant coach. He saw some of the problems that they had. Even at a nice, wealthy high school, they didn't have football, didn't have enough Gatorade, didn't have enough equipment. And off and on, he had tried to do some things about it. But when the series ran, that was the final straw. He was done screwing around. He wanted to help make a change. So they contacted us. A couple weeks later, they went to Hooters, the original Hooters in Clearwater, with 3 schools from the area, Gulf, Gibbs, and Lato High School. And he and Hooters presented 3 giant $5,000 checks to each school to buy those cleats, to buy those helmets, buy those football, pay for uniforms, whatever it is that they needed to do. And then he kept doing it on his Monday night football stops across the country in Atlanta, St. Louis, and Dallas. He'd do the same thing with other coaches, because the problems in Tampa Bay, there's problems in Florida, the same problems here, the same problems anywhere else. He saw something because of the series and the work that my colleagues did, and he wanted to make a change. Radio, sports talk radio normally doesn't want much to do with high school sports. We've got Bucks and Braves and NFL and Lightning to talk about, but they wanted us to come on. They wanted to talk about the crazy stuff that parents were doing and what some parents can do if they think they're having a problem. What can you as a parent do to take a step back, analyze things, and go back down to earth and realize it's just a high school football game. It's not the Bucks, it's not even Penn State, it's just a high school football game. About 6 months after the series ran, Positive Coaching Alliance opened up its own chapter in Tampa Bay. I'm sure it had absolutely nothing to do with us, but I like the fact, and I'm proud of the fact, that the conversation that I think we helped start is continuing with a different kind of dialogue that can make a difference in kids' lives in Tampa Bay and across the country. The series resonated, I think, for 2 big reasons. High school sports is hurting, and to many people, high school sports still very much matters. And it's interesting because when we first came up with the idea, the title we called it in our heads was "What's Killing High School Sports?" Absolutely terrible headline that would not work in any newspaper. And at the end of the day, too, we found out that it wasn't true. High school sports isn't dying, it's changing. The money is a lot worse than it was, the pressures are greater, but the kids are becoming better at the end of it. The training is better, the clubs are better, more kids are getting opportunities. So high school sports isn't changing, or isn't dying, but it's changing. And I think we, as an industry, are in the exact same position. I stand before you at a very interesting time in journalism, and then also at the Tampa Bay Times. Our problems with money are not, they're the same as everybody else's. We've had our share of budget cuts, we've had our share of cuts. And it's been painful, and it's been sad. But I'm also here 2 days after we won our 10th Pulitzer Prize. Thank you. We're proud of that, and I'm proud of those guys. And I'm proud of those guys and what they did with local reporting, because it made a difference. And they were grinders like us. They saw a problem. They saw some homeless people getting shelter, paid for by the state, and living in absolute squalor, with cockroaches on toothbrushes and filth everywhere. And one of the guys getting paid for it was the head of the Port of Tampa Authority, making 6 figures from the state. They saw a problem, and they wanted to fix it. Just like we saw a problem and we wanted to fix it. But I'm confident that the problems that we face can eventually settle down a little bit. Because like high school sports, what we as an industry, what I do every day, what you all learn, and what you all will do when you graduate, it's important and it matters. No matter how hard things get in the world, in the industry, and everything else, there are always going to be problems that need the sunshine. There are always going to be people that need a voice. Again, I want to thank you so much on behalf of my colleagues for letting me come up here and let me yak for a couple minutes, and be happy to take any questions you have.
Again, let's just open it up to questions. If anybody wants to ask about the series or its construction or the issues that the paper raised in youth sports, fire away.
I don't bite.
First off, in the Tampa area, after this story was done, do you think it brought change maybe at all, or a different look to how high school sports in the area were run?
I don't know necessarily about how they're run, but I do think there is a change among some of the people that read it. I don't think we're in a position to change the whole world, but I think some of the parents probably read it. Talking to coaches, I know a lot of them read it, and finally said, look, this is too much, this is too extreme. And certainly the biggest impact was with money, with organizations that stepped up to do something about it. The school I wrote about in the league, Gibbs High School, to refresh your memory, or if you didn't read it, that's fine. They, at spring football practice, their coach would make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the kids. They didn't have enough peanut butter and jelly to go around, so they had to ration how much they could put, so they could put it on every single piece of bread. Some people in the community saw that, and at their next practice, after their next game, whatever it was, Chick-fil-A catered it. Is that huge? Is that going to make a massive difference? No. But to give those kids had something to eat, I'll take that.
You mentioned everybody being really open about the problems. What were some of the obstacles you faced kind of in the coverage today?
The biggest problem we faced was having too much stuff. I mean, we did dozens of interviews. We had about 6 writers and an editor working on it over the course of months. So the biggest issue we faced was trying to get this much stuff into this much space. Some of the coaches were reluctant to talk about things, and one of the issues too is we didn't want to slam anybody too hard, because a lot of these problems we looked at didn't have any easy solutions. It's not like there's a Band-Aid. Oh, parents aren't crazy anymore! Hooray! That's not the way it works. So that was an issue, to try and come up with some reasonable solutions, because we didn't want to just sit there and complain. We wanted to do something about it, or suggest some things that could be done.
Are these schools where you list what the coaches get paid, are they some of the same schools that produce these Florida superstars?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Wow.
It's fascinating when you look at Florida. You know, if we did the same story, the same series in Dallas or in Los Angeles, there would be some very different things. In Texas, your top high school football coaches get 6 figures. They get at least $100,000 a year. And they're on, it's interesting that they're on an administrator's pay scale rather than a teacher's pay scale. So instead of starting at $30,000 a year, they start at $70,000 a year or whatever. So yeah, the schools in there, Clayton High School, which is a perennial power. Aaron Murray is going to get drafted at some point. He went to Georgia. Orson Charles is in the NFL. James Wilder is going to get drafted at some point probably. They produce NFL guys. They win state championships. Their high school football coach makes, I think his stipend is about $4,000 a year. And he teaches English. It's not like he's just a football coach. He teaches English. And some of the teachers, some of the coaches teach art, or a lot of them teach PE, but English, science, whatever. And the big thing, the coaches were so willing to talk about how much money they make. My God, they were beating down the doors to talk about it. Because the amount of work that they put in, with parents being crazier, with 7-on-7 summer tournaments being crazier, with the recruiting cycle being so sped up where freshmen and 8th graders are getting college offers. the demand on their time is so much greater. They haven't gotten a raise really, still make about $3,000-4,000 a year. They figured it out, and some of them said they get paid pennies on the hour. One of the coaches told us that we had to slightly tweak this in print, but coaching nowadays is like getting kicked in the nuts and paying someone $10 to do it. I think we put groin in parentheses, but you get the picture. Yeah.
Did you happen to look at high schools like IMG where it's like a sports academy and what their coaches are treated like they're regular?
IMG is a fascinating case. For those of you that don't know about IMG Academy, it's in Bradenton, which is half hour, 45 minutes from where we are. It was a school started just to be a tennis and golf academy. If you're going to be an elite tennis or golfer, you go there. You kind of go to school, but you're mostly there to learn how to play golf or play tennis. And it's expanded here in the last couple of years with basketball and football. Michael O'Connor, your quarterback who did all those good things, he went to IMG. So yeah, we looked at it because it's certainly an issue that high schools are facing. Plenty of kids have decided to drop out of their normal high school and play there instead. My concern with that is obviously it's going to hurt the high school game if some of your top players aren't in it. My other concern is what happens when one of those kids transfers to IMG or Finley Prep or some of those like it, and blows out his knee and never plays again. My concern is whether the education they're getting is going to make up for it and pay off if they don't get a college scholarship or they don't get a chance to play professionally. So it's a problem that's gotten worse here in the last couple of years, and I think in the next 10 or 20 years, it's going to be a very big issue in high school sports.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Second of all, you mentioned IMG. Did you have a chance to research or talk to the difference between a lot of public schools and a lot of private or parochial schools? And did you see a significant difference between the approach and the problems or advantages being there?
Yeah, we've certainly looked into that, and it really depends on the school. There are certainly some schools that have the money to pay football coaches well, to have beautiful basketball facilities, but mostly at the private level here. There are certainly some of those schools, but some of the private schools, Tampa Catholic to name one, it's fine, but it's not that much better or that much worse than your typical school, your typical public school. There is a difference, but it really depends. Plant High School, when I was talking about earlier, that wins all the state championships, in a lot of ways that has nicer facilities and nicer academics than some of the private schools do. So it just completely depends. Although nationwide there's a huge argument and a huge disagreement between public schools and private schools. And do private schools have an advantage and how much of an advantage? And some of them they certainly do, but a lot of them face the exact same issues. Tampa Catholic's boys basketball coach told us that he's gotten a raise of, I think he started in 1991. If you average it out, he's gotten a raise of $35 a year. When he started, gas was, I think, $1.10 a gallon. So $35 doesn't get you very far.
So you get your stories, do you find yourself like digging for the information, or do you see people, like parents or coaches, contacting you first?
Both. With this, we knew about it so far ahead of time. We had a meeting, we have regular meetings, and there was one, it would have been June of 2012. We kind of figured out our rough plan of what stories we thought we needed to tackle. So then over the next year, we could just kind of, I don't know, I heard coach resigned recently because parents were too crazy. Let's just kind of add that to the file, you know? But there are certainly times too when parents will come up and tell you things. That's the advantage of all the grunt work that we do, of all the times where you go out to football practice and you talk to parents on the sideline. You go to a swim meet and sit in the stand and talk to parents and kids. You get a lot of stuff that way. And this story, it was a mixture though. Yeah, go ahead.
Club sports like AAU basketball, we have travel baseball teams, soccer teams. Do you think they're almost as glorified as just the regular high school sport itself? More. Do you think that culture will ever change?
You stumped me. It could, but there has to be a concerted effort to make it change. One of the issues a lot of college coaches have with AAU is that it decreases the emphasis on fundamentals. And because kids are so free to switch from Nike to Adidas or whatever, that it doesn't give loyalty. So the cliche that they're playing for the name on the back of the jersey, not the name on the front, I think to a degree that holds true. I think the way that you could make that change is if the NCAA and the college coaches make it change. By that I mean, you don't see a lot of college coaches come into high school basketball games because there's no point. Your top players are going to go out and score 20, 30 points, get 10 rebounds, and they're going to dominate because they're the best player on the court. But if you go to a big tournament in July in Atlanta or whatever, you're going to have best players playing the best players. So you can determine, is this guy a Big Ten guy? Is he a MAC guy? Is he an Atlantic Sun guy? What is his talent? So I think the way that could change would be if the NCAA steps in and puts restrictions on the club season, on the AAU season, and makes coaches go out to more high school games so that the kids are more likely to want to play those to get seen by coaches. I think that's the only way to do it.
The journalists obviously have to write a lot of things on deadline. The varsity blues story is more like a long-term thing. So how do you budget your time between like what listening you do that night versus like having time for long-term things? I think that like when the long-term project was ready to be published.
This long-term project was ready to be published when the editor said it's running next week. We had, in this case, we had a date penciled in. Like I said, it was the Major League Baseball All-Star break. So July in Florida, when the Rays aren't playing, there's not much going on. So that was the best time for us to run it because it would get good play, it would be out front, good art, and it would give us the space we needed to tell this story the best way we possibly could. Generally speaking, though, it's a constant challenge between the day-to-day, the deadline, and your bigger picture stuff. What I've learned over the years is if I have an idea that it could be a good project or a good bigger feature, to be completely upfront immediately with my editor. Say, hey, what if we did this? And I'm still kind of working on the details, but this is a story I'm interested in. And then if it's something that my editors are interested in, they'll give you time to work on it. But some of it is you have to be willing to do it on your own time. I did a story a couple years ago about the rise of the MAC in football. Have you ever watched the Tuesday night ESPN games in the middle of nowhere in front of 10,000 people? I love the MAC. Great high scoring, so much fun. So I did a story on it and the extreme number of Florida kids that were populating it. I think like 1 out of every 8 touchdowns scored in the conference that year was from a kid who was originally from Florida. There's no Florida school in the MAC. They're thousands of miles away. So I wanted to do a story on that. So what I would do is my own time, sitting at home after my wife falls asleep on the couch, I'd look up, go to every roster, find all the Florida kids, find how many touchdowns they scored, add it all up into a database on my own time. So then, that Thursday night or whatever, I sent it to my editor, hey, this is what I found. And I did that because I thought it was an interesting story. I hadn't seen it done before, and I knew during the day I probably wouldn't have time to do it. So I made time. It was a cool piece. I really liked it.
Do you have aspirations to go beyond covering prep?
I do. I certainly do. To be honest, I'm glad I have a job right now. We can kind of start there, but eventually I'd like to move on to cover other things, and fortunately the Tampa Bay Times gives me that opportunity. Covered a lot of Florida State stuff, covered the last 3 Daytona 500s and IndyCar races and St. Pete and that sort of thing. But the one thing I will say is my goal coming out of high school, or coming out of college, was to not cover preps. I did not want to do it. I thought I was way better than that. It was absolutely beneath me. And my first job was in Springfield, Missouri, and I didn't cover preps. Yes, I win. But then an opportunity came up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I took it, and I was covering football games every Friday night and volleyball games every Tuesday night. The reason I say that there's such an importance on it is because you learn the basics. You get a chance to screw up with no pressure, other than, crazy parent or two, but they'll be ticked off no matter what. And prep coaches and players are so much more accessible. You never have to worry about media access. You never have to worry about anything like that. And there are so many good stories about this quarterback who had this whatever, and this kid whose dad played in the NFL. This kid who had brain cancer last year and just finished 5th in the conference cross-country meet. There's so many good stories to tell in preps that it just never ends.
Just want to thank everybody for their questions. That was great, and Matt for his obvious passion for the job and for his enthusiasm. Raise your hand if you think he deserves a new beat. And thanks again for coming. And we'll be around if you want to come up and ask questions.
Yeah, I'll be around. I don't bite. Come chat.
Okay.